Texas, handily winning his primary just a couple of nights ago.
Yeah, he's got another Senate race coming up. Maria Teresa Kumar, talk to us about the issue of abortion and how much you hope the president focuses his speech on this topic.
Well, I think if you see who are the guests of different members of Congress and the First Lady, they are Katie Cox from Texas, who had to leave Texas in order to get an abortion. There is the woman from Alabama talking about IVF. And so this is front and center. One of the things that we learned during the red wave that did not happen during the midterm elections was that there were plenty of independent and moderate Republican dads who said abortion is going just a bit too far. And so that red wave that we expected did not happen because abortion is absolutely one of the things that every single American recognizes, that we want freedom. What we're going to hear from the president is not just framing freedom as a woman's agency, but it's going to be about general freedoms. If the government is all of a sudden deciding who can or cannot be part of your family planning, then all of a sudden it should ricochet on what other freedoms are they going to take away from you. And I do think that there was such a misstep on this IVF on the Republican side from Alabama.
Yeah. Hope you guys are tapped in, y'all. Tap in.
Because all of a sudden it energized women that may have not been in the game prior. Because IVF usually means that I cannot leave the state. My family planning now happens at home. And it becomes very personal. And this idea that someone is now interjecting in that message.
I want to go to Ryan. I'll
really,
take Ryan.
really
All right, we're going to check in with some of our reporters. I do want to circle back to the topic of IVF in Alabama because we know the person who's going to give the rebuttal tonight, Senator Katie Britt, has her own story from the state of Alabama. I'm going to check in first with Ryan Nobles. Ryan, so we were getting some early indications that you know, obviously a lot of the faces we've known about, but then also some surprise guests as we're looking at Senator Bernie Sanders. And also, Ryan, just so you know, I may have to interrupt you because we're starting to see some action at the White House as well. If we can put those live pics for our viewers right now. So, Ryan, tell us what new reporting you have about who's in the gallery.
Yeah, well, the first thing I just have to say, Tom, that stands out as you're sitting in this room right now is the sea of Democratic women members of Congress who have worked it out together to dress in all white as part of a message that they're sending related to women's rights and reproductive rights. And not only...
How's everybody doing? Tap in, tap in, tap in. Listen, get the word out. We are live. State of the Union address. We hope you're well. Hope your afternoon is good. Tap in with us. Tap in. Get the word out. Get the word out. Tap in, tap in, tap in. What TV is here? Let me know, you guys. Have y'all seen our last videos? What y'all think about the flights, man? Coming in and out of Nicaragua, Cuba, Haiti, or Haitians that need help right now. How do y'all feel about all the flights and incoming migrants? Or how do you feel about just the migrants overall being able to take domestic flights? Do you think it's a safety concern? Let us know. Shout us out.
A name of the young woman who was killed by a migrant, Laken Riley.
Listen
the young
in,
woman.
everybody.
There goes Joe Biden. There goes the Prezi. There you go right there for y'all. He's on his way.
Making a brief comment to the folks up on the balcony, joking, "Don't jump, I need you," to his supporters who have gathered.
I see it right there. What TV? I see it right there.
Ready for that quick drive down Pennsylvania Avenue, quicker than Tom, you or I could do it, since you won't have any traffic lights to contend with. That's one of the perks, of course, of being president. A significant moment for him as you saw the First Lady walk out just ahead of him. Obviously, the guests that she and he will have as their people here at the State of the Union, significant and meant to send a message. As you see the president saying a few words there, talking probably to his wife inside the vehicle, pointing to the cameras who are out there as well. Peter Alexander is live for us on the other side of the White House, on the North Lawn. Peter, talk us through some of these moments here.
Yeah, Hallie, just a moment ago, as the president walked out there on the south portico of the White House before entering the Beast, we heard him, reporters yelling questions to him, among others, asking him how he's feeling right now. He said good before looking at other staff members, telling them not to jump, as you joke. He said he's going to need them. There he is alongside the First Lady, though, as they wave. This is the president's third State of the Union, but obviously the stakes in this one, as we've noted, are so much more critical than they have been in any speech he has delivered before the American people to this point. And as I speak to White House advisors, they acknowledge there's going to be a lot of focus tonight on the president's delivery, but really what they think the focus should be on tonight is on what the president has delivered. And they recognize the urgency of this moment to best communicate to the American people, Americans who don't pay attention to the news headlines every day, for whom this is a unique opportunity to hear from him in this venue, speaking for more than an hour as expected tonight. White House aides have insisted, and frankly, polling shows that they're right on a lot of these issues, that many of the president's policy positions and his accomplishments are viewed as popular, but that a lot of Americans don't know that he is responsible for some of those accomplishments. The president, as you've been reporting, expected to frame this as a comeback story of sorts, reminding people how we got here. January 2021, you'll remember, more than 100,000 Americans died. That was the deadliest month of the pandemic for the United States, and the difference this president will insist that he has made in helping the country rebound in the course of that time, in spite of a lot of work that still needs to be done. You've hit these highlights, but I'm told by a senior advisor as I walk out here, the president right out of the gates is going to focus heavily on the topic of democracy, not just around the world, Ukraine certainly on that front, but here at home with the threat posed by the former President Donald Trump. Hallie and Tom.
With former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi right there. We also want to point out that caravan that was behind the beast is all part of sort of the formation that goes from the White House to Capitol Hill as the president makes his way there. We expect them there, Hallie, in just a few minutes. The drive is pretty fast. The question I still wonder about is that protest, and if at all the president can hear it, if it makes it to his radar. There's people who've even told him that there's a pro-Palestinian protest happening just outside Capitol Hill and just outside of where his speech is going to take place. Seen a sea of white right now inside the House chamber. A lot of women, obviously female Democrats, representatives, who wanted to send a big message tonight.
Yeah, and listen, there is a part of this that is about the optics, right? It's about how things look. It's about who you're texting.
And what is that
Massey,
device? What is that device there? I don't know if I know what that device is.
I believe that looks like a countdown clock on the national debt
National debt clock.
That's
thank you for pointing that out to us.
A common thing that some of these Republicans will wear at times. I want to bring in Ryan Nobles, who I believe we have, who has probably one of the best seats in the House for somebody who is not a member of Congress or an invited guest. And Ryan, you are up there. We don't have Ryan just yet. We have David Plouffe, in fact, Democratic strategist, somebody who knows what it is like to have a high-stakes moment like this.
And I was talking to David earlier in the night. And David, talk to our viewers about if you had the chance to speak to President Biden. I know you've been in this position before, as we see live pictures here of Senator Romney in the chamber. But if you had a chance to speak to President Biden right before he departed for Capitol Hill, what's the one piece of advice you'd give him tonight?
Well, try and keep it limited because you don't want to put too much in their head. I'd probably say have fun. You know, you've prepped, the speech is ready, you've practiced performance. Go out there and let it rip and be loose. The session will come to order.
We're going to pause for a moment and listen to Speaker Johnson.
Members of the committee on the part of the House to escort the President of the United States into the chamber. The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Emmer. The gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Stefanik. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Hudson. The gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Palmer. The gentleman from Utah, Mr. Moore. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McClain. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Reschenthaler. The gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Rogers. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Jeffries. The gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark. The gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar. The gentleman from California, Mr. Liu. The gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Del Bene. The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse. The gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Underwood. The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Escobar. The gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Trahan. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Kildee.
Speaker Johnson there, acknowledging all the leadership in the House.
And we'll listen to the Vice President.
Of the Senate to escort the President of the United States into the House chamber. The Senator from New York, Mr. Schumer. The Senator from Illinois, Mr. Durbin. The senator from Washington, Mrs. Murray. The senator from Michigan, Ms. Stabenow. The senator from Minnesota, Ms. Klobuchar. The senator from Virginia, Mr. Warner. The senator from Wisconsin, Ms. Baldwin. The senator from Kentucky, Mr. McConnell. The senator from South Dakota, Mr. Thune. The senator from Wyoming, Mr. Barrasso. The senator from West Virginia, Mrs. Capito. And the senator from Iowa, Ms. Ernst.
The members of the escort committee will exit the chamber through the lobby doors.
The escort committee appointed by the Speaker and by the Vice President, as we are just minutes away now from President Biden walking in for his State of the Union address. Potentially, depending on how things go in November, his final, or perhaps not.
And maybe his most important, right? And I think everyone will agree to that. You were mentioning the pomp and circumstance of this moment as we look at Representative Matt Gaetz from Florida, someone else who could possibly heckle the former president. And we're looking here as other senators gather to talk about likely the importance of this speech and what happens next, right? And what to expect from President Biden. Eugene Scott, who joins us now. Eugene, what are you looking out for in the president's speech?
Well, I'm looking forward to him addressing many of the issues that we know voters have said concern him in surveys and polls, and one of them, quite frankly, is his age. He's going to have to look energetic. There needs to be vigor. He needs to be sharp, and let these individuals know that he has what it takes to stay in leadership.
Molly, as you watch what happens here, how much of a fight is going to happen tonight? How much of the heckling, the back and forth?
Well, Republicans seem to have concluded that the back and forth last year did them no favors. I think we've heard a lot of them say that they expect more decorum tonight, in part because they don't want to give Joe Biden that political gift. Last year, when he was able to sort of clap back at them, that was a moment that the White House really relished, and I don't think Republicans enjoyed it very much. So we'll see. It may be too big a temptation for some of his opponents to want to yell at him, but I wouldn't be surprised if they sit on their hands a little bit.
As we wait for others to enter the chambers right now, and of course, just behind them, the president, how much politically do you think it's going to matter for him if he hits it out of the park or if he has stumbles?
Historically, we have not seen presidents get much of a bump out of these State of the Union addresses. It's sort of an inside Washington phenomenon. But as many people have said tonight, this is so high stakes for this president. I think in the wake of last month's special counsel report that really amplified so many concerns among voters across the board, among Democrats specifically, about the president's age, about his ability to perform. So if he's able to, as you said, hit it out of the park, perhaps that does make a difference. Perhaps that does reset the narrative for him. And of course, if he does stumble in some way, I think that could be absolutely disastrous.
As we just saw Marjorie Taylor Greene as well. Eugene Scott, you know, this is going to be a close election. Every poll shows that. The president having some issues with minority groups across the country, including Arab Americans, Black Americans, Hispanics. Do you think he addresses any of those groups tonight?
I think that's very possible. I mean, we know that he's going to talk about the conflict in Gaza, and this is something that many voters want to hear about, including young voters, a demographic that he needs to be victorious in many of those states that will determine who will win in November.
We were just listening as they were announcing the Supreme Court is now entering, led by Chief Justice John Roberts, who will appear. There he is. Sonia Sotomayor, I believe, just behind him. Justice Gorsuch, Elena Kagan, Justice Kavanaugh as well. And I think we also have our first pictures of the beast that is carrying the president right now as it enters Capitol Hill.
Joe Biden's pulling up, y'all. Joe Biden's pulling up, y'all. Who's with us? Who's with us? Tap in, tap in, tap in. Tap in, y'all. Get the word out. We live, man. We live. We're going to see if Joe Biden addresses the migrant situation, taxes, anything like that. We're going to bring it out to y'all. All right? Thank you.
Guests. And Molly, something that I found interesting was that there will be a lot of important people that will be acknowledged. There will be nobody from Israel, no Palestinian, nobody from Gaza. It seems they sort of avoided that when it came to guests.
You know, this is a little bit of a different topic, but on the subject of the court, one thing we do know is that the president plans to call out the Supreme Court and talk about Roe v. Wade, specifically.
Those were one of the excerpts released, right?
The decision that was made by the court and say, you know, the court said that women have political power, and they've shown that in talking about his desire to see Roe reinstated. So, I mean, I think on Gaza, it'll be very interesting. Does the president want to speak to that left wing of the party that has been protesting, that we see protesting outside tonight? Or is he going to speak to the broad middle of the American electorate that is more favorable to Israel? I'll be very interested to
As
know
we
what
see,
tone he strikes on
Justice
that.
Ketanji Brown Jackson and the Supreme Court will have such a significant role in this election as well. They already have, weighing on some of the
All the judges are there. Supreme Court judges are there. Everybody's there. Tap in. Are you there? Are you with us? State of the Union address. State of the Union address. Come
See
on.
what happens tonight.
Tap in. Tap in. Tap in.
about to enter.
We're going to have the jokes.
We want to thank all of our guests tonight on this portion of our broadcast.
There goes Kamala Harris. We got a video coming up on her soon. Y'all going to want to tap into that too.
Tonight, President Biden on the state of our union. The president set to address a bitterly divided Congress, outlining.
Y'all see it. The press going to come up. Tap in with us. Tap in. How y'all feeling today? Do you think Joe Biden's going to talk about the migrant situation? Come on. He giving out flights. 130,000 people a month came in. Let's know how y'all feel. How y'all feeling out there? How y'all feeling? Do y'all think Joe Biden's going to address the migrant situation? Tap in, tap in, tap in.
The challenges facing Americans at home and abroad.
The war in Ukraine now at a critical crossroads while fears remain of a wider war.
That rematch now set between him and former President Trump tonight might be the president's best chance.
The chamber's
to
full,
get
y'all.
his message out there.
The chamber's full. The chamber's full. Tap in, tap in, tap in. State of the Union address. State of the Union address. Get the word out. Get the word out.
Immigration, the economy, and of course, 2 wars raging overseas.
Our Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles is inside the chamber. Ryan, what are you seeing there as folks continue to file their way?
That's our girl right there. That's our girl right there. That's our girl right there. What TV? That was Nicole Malliotakis. We support her. We like her. Nicole Malliotakis, what's up? Get at What TV?
Front and center.
We with you, girl.
Sea of white, and this is the women from the Democratic caucus. They decided to band together to wear.
The Democrats are all wearing white. Nicole Malliotakis, she wasn't with it.
Rights. Something else to look for tonight is that some members purposely wearing yellow and blue to show their ongoing support of Ukraine, and of course the push for that supplemental aid package to pass at some point. We're also noticing Republicans in the crowd today, many of them wearing white ribbons. This is their way of demonstrating their concerns about the ongoing border crisis and the violence that they believe is associated with it. Some also displaying pins with the name of Laken Riley, who of course was that young woman who was allegedly murdered by an undocumented immigrant. You know, Lester and Savannah, it's important to point out that tonight.
What? Rest in peace, Lincoln Riley. We got to address this migrant situation. Will Joe Biden address the migrant situation straight on? Let us know your thoughts.
Those slim margins make it really difficult for Congress to get anything of substance accomplished. And because that partisanship is at an all-time high, there is, of course, the possibility of the president being heckled by members of his opposing party. And although the new Speaker, Mike Johnson, who it's important to point out, he'll be sitting behind the president for the first time. He's only been in the job for a couple of months. He has instructed his members to abide by the House rules, and he's told them to display what he calls decorum. The other thing we'll be looking for tonight, Lester and Savannah, is that there's going to be several guests in the gallery who represent various causes. They have been invited by members of Congress or the White House. Among them, the families of the American hostages that are still being held captive in Gaza, and of course caught up in that conflict between Hamas and Israel. And of course, we do expect the conflict in the Middle East to be a key focus tonight. We do know that the president will address this situation, But as we talk about protesters, there's also that possibility that an individual member, maybe of the president's own party, or perhaps one of their guests, attempts to stage some sort of a protest to put pressure on President Biden to work to bring an end to the war and, of course, the humanitarian crisis that is playing out there in the Middle East. And then we should also...
How do y'all feel about the war in the Middle East, y'all? Does the United States have our head stuck in too many places? That's what somebody told me the other day. They said, man, we got Haiti going on. I asked about Haiti. They said, we can't help Haiti. They said, we're in Gaza. We're dealing with Russia. We cannot help Haiti. I said, what? Haiti's like right there. We could fly halfway across the world, but we can't help Haiti. Let us know your thoughts, man. Let us know your thoughts. The president will soon be on. Thank you for tapping in. We appreciate y'all.
Many of these members who believe that he should be impeached, even though at this point they've yet to demonstrate the evidence that would rise to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors. So we do expect the president in this chamber very shortly. At this point, members are just milling about, having conversations with each other, catching up as they prepare for this moment. It's interesting, Lester and Savannah, we were in the chamber very early this afternoon, around 3 o'clock, and there were already members lining up to get those key coveted seats along the aisle where the president will walk in so that they can get that moment, shake the president's hand, and be seen on that.
I didn't see Nicole Malliotakis talking to anybody. She was in there just checking things.
That on full display here when the president enters this room in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, Savannah noting quite a contrast in the number of people and the people we're seeing in there, including George Santos.
An expelled member of Congress who still, as a former member of Congress not convicted of a crime, has a right to be there on the House floor and has decided to come tonight. No invitation necessary. So he's there, just one of the many storylines that we see developing on the floor tonight.
And the timing of all this coming 2 days after Super Tuesday, a prime moment the president has to really get his message out there to respond to the darker view of America that Republicans have been offering. We want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Peter Alexander. Peter, what can we expect from the president?
Lester, in effect, this is the starting gun on the 2024 campaign, as a senior aide to the president described to me. I think there's a couple things to keep an eye on. This is a night that's filled with both challenges and opportunities. The challenge here, of course, the president facing low approval ratings. Many Americans have questions, real concerns about his age, his physical and mental health right now. But it's an opportunity because the president...
Yeah, what do you guys feel about Joe Biden's age? Right now, the polls are showing that Trump is slightly ahead in the polls. But how do you feel about Joe Biden's age? How do you feel? Let's see if he stumbles. Who has the over or under if he stumbles? Do you think the president is going to stumble or forget anything tonight? Let's see. Tap in with us. Thank you for being with us.
5,000 Americans. And yet the economy has been growing in the time since. The president will tout the strong job growth. He'll tout the fact that inflation, though still high, is now 2/3 of what it was at its peak. And while a lot of the focus for many Americans, given concerns about the president's age, will be on his delivery, the White House's primary focus tonight is on what the president has delivered for the American people. I'm told by a senior...
We're going to show y'all some numbers. We're just going to show y'all some numbers. Take a look while y'all listen. Take a look while y'all listen, okay? We're going to put some numbers up on your screen right now just to show you how things are going in different states across the country and the polls and how they're leading. We're going to show you a little bit of that while you listen.
Democracy, not just around the world, including in places like Ukraine, but here at home with the threat that's posed by the potential for another Trump presidency. The topic of reproductive rights, as Ryan noted a moment ago, is going to be key, with a key individual in the First Lady's box this evening being someone whose family benefited from IVF. Another one, an individual there who is someone who sued the state of Texas for its near total abortion ban. And finally, of course, is the issue of the economy as well. The president will sharply contrast his vision, his time in office, to that of his predecessor, though he may not refer to him as name. And on that topic, the president's going to say, my lifetime is...
Look at the numbers, y'all. Look at these numbers. Look at the numbers on your screen. Trump is slightly up right now by like 1 or 2%. On certain polls, 3%. Let me know how y'all feel.
That is not me. Just one example of the contrast the president is expected to make tonight from excerpts we received only a short time ago. Lester and Savannah.
All right, Peter, thank you. And to set the scene, there we see former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, members of Congress mixing and mingling with members of the cabinet, Supreme Court justices that have assembled there. We see the second gentleman entering right now. We await the State of the Union, one of the storied traditions of our...
Shout out to Nancy Pelosi. Shout out to Nancy Pelosi. Shout out to her.
Secret. How he performs tonight is as key as anything that he says from that podium.
Savannah, you've hit the nail on the head. This is an extraordinary moment for that very reason, because yes, we're going to be paying attention to all of his policy proposals, but everyone is going to be focused on his performance. Think about last year. He was widely seen as giving a very strong, robust speech, in part because when Republicans jeered at him, when they heckled him, he flipped it around. He turned it on their head. Can he show the same type of fight? Here comes the First Lady entering the chamber. If we want to pause for a moment. And Savannah, I think that is what people will be looking for tonight. Does he show the same fight? And does it feel authentic? We know that the White House has been preparing for some jeering from Republicans, even though the House Speaker has encouraged his conference not to do that. But undoubtedly, that is something we might see.
All right, we'll pause for a moment as the president is about to be introduced.
Mr. Speaker, the president's cabinet.
Here we go, y'all. Here you go. It's about to go down. It's about to go down. If we got any jokes, tag us. If y'all have anything to say, hop in the comment section, man. Here we go.
And Hallie, as we can continue our discussions, we wait for the president. There's also the question, will the president go on the defense about some of the issues, immigration, the economy, or take the alternate view and a positive, affirmative case for his policies?
Well, I think you'll see both. But on the issue of immigration, I can tell you based on conversations that I've had with sources close to the Biden campaign, he will look to flip the script on immigration. He is going to look to do what he's been trying to do with a smaller audience. Obviously, he's got tens of millions of eyeballs on him tonight to try to point out, hey, wait a second, you could have passed a comprehensive bipartisan border security bill, and Congress did not. I would not be surprised to hear the president talk about that tonight in a full-throated way. I also spoke with a member of Republican leadership who's in the room tonight, who suggested that that may not be the most effective line of attack for the president. Republicans have been going after him on the humanitarian crisis at the border for months now. This is one of the central arguments against him, as we've seen something really interesting happen. For the last however many years, we sit here, we talk about how the economy, people's money, is what drives them to get out and vote come November. This year now, for one of the first times, we are seeing in some polls immigration overtake that as the #1 issue that affects people. I will tell you, I was texting with a Democratic member.
What do you think is your #1 issue going into the 2024 election? Is it the migrant situation? Is it housing? Is it jobs? What do you think? What do you think? What concerns you the most? Is it the future of Social Security? What is it?
Rehearsing this speech, he was at Camp David this weekend. We've been told.
There goes House Secretary Mayorkas, man. They try to get him out of here. Look at the Republicans. They like, what he's showing up doing here. Look at the Republicans. They looking at Mayorkas like, what are you doing here?
Stakes of this moment.
You supposed to be impeached.
The case against Donald Trump in recent weeks. Tonight is his night to make the case for Joe Biden, to counter the critics who say that he doesn't have it in him to serve another 4 years. I also think that there is a political challenge here. He's got to energize.
That's another thing. Are you guys ready for Kamala Harris to be our president, just in case anything happens to Joe Biden? Kamala Harris will be our president. Are you ready for that? First woman president.
Those are the types of voters who could make a big difference in some of these.
Well, he came right out when Donald Trump appeared to reject those voters. Said, "I'll take them. They're welcome in my campaign."
That's right. And remember what Donald Trump has said. He's basically said, "I don't need those voters." So those voters are for the taking.
Although on Tuesday night in a statement, he did say, "If you want to join my movement, you may." But he was not moving in their direction. He said, "Feel free to move in my direction." But it raises the political question you raise is really interesting, because Hallie, do you perceive this election about turning out your base? And is the enthusiasm on the left against Trump more than it's for Biden? And does that create an opportunity for Biden then to move to the center if he wants to try to capture those independents, the suburban moms, the tried and true swing voters who decide so many elections?
To make the bet that the progressives to his left are not going to find Donald Trump more palatable than Joe Biden, however concerned they are about some of the issues that they have, like his handling of the Israel-Hamas war. Absolutely. Because, listen, this is going to have to be both, right? If the answer is both. It's a turnout election. You got to turn out your base. But the margins are so close here that you also have to appeal to those suburban moms in those swing battleground states. And that's going to be critical for either President Biden or for former President Donald Trump to do, who, by the way, he's watching. I mean, now that we are hitting the general election full swing this week, 240 days to go now until November, he is going to be, he says, quote unquote, fact checking, or at least
what?
The things that the president's saying.
But Kristen, we just said this on Tuesday night. I'm going to say it again, Hallie. It's a rematch of 2020. Now we know it's not a replay. Things are different 4 years later.
Things are very different. First of all, former President Trump is facing 4 different...
What TV? Listen, Joe Biden better be as funny as Donald Trump. Trump was funny in his last couple speeches.
Difference. In the primary, it has emboldened him. It's energized him. It's allowed him to galvanize Republican voters around him. How will it play in the general election? Here's why it's also different. During the last election cycle, candidate Biden was never trailing former President Trump. Very different situation this time around. Polls show he's trailing him in general election polls as well as in key battleground state polls. And that's what, based on my conversations with the president's allies, really has them concerned.
Gets back to the idea of losing the narrative. And in this case, President Biden, a lot of his supporters think that he's been slow to respond to some of these things.
That's right. They say that he hasn't shown enough urgency. And in fact, I was speaking to some of his closest allies today who said, tonight's when you are going to see that urgency. Everything starts tonight. And they say this is when people really start paying attention. We'll have to see if that's the case.
Well, and voters want to see that he has a pep in his step. Let's turn to Christine Romans. She's our senior business correspondent. And Hallie does mention now that immigration is right up there. It's been it's the economy stupid, has been the political cliche since the 90s. Well, now it's the economy and it's immigration. But the economy is such an interesting picture because, as you well know, and I know you have these numbers memorized, so many of the metrics show an improving economy, and yet people don't say they feel it. And it comes down to inflation, and specifically the grocery store.
Absolutely. The state of the American economy is strong. This should be a big advantage in a State of the Union address. But the state of the American psyche is skeptical or exhausted, depending on who you talk to, and exhausted by, the 3 years of higher inflation. Inflation is moderating. You'll hear the president say that today. He won't say it's mission accomplished, but prices are higher than they were 3 years ago.
Here comes the president.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
Hey, Rashab. What TV? Thank you for tapping in. He's out, y'all. He's out.
President who spent a lot of time in these chambers still has a lot of friends and acquaintances, and he will take his time as he has in previous previous years.
Yep. Who thinks this is Joe Biden's last run, man? This might be his last time doing things like this, because if he doesn't get reelected, man, he might just retire. What do you think? Do you think Joe's going to retire if he doesn't get reelected? Is this his last run? Are we witnessing his last run, the end of an era?
Can imagine a young Joe Biden imagined himself in this role, and it seems he's relishing every single minute. And this is the Joe.
This might be a historical run for us, man. This might be the last time.
Glad handing, the chit-chatting. He's going to stretch out this moment.
I feel like I've been seeing Joe Biden since I was a kid, man. Joe Biden's been in office for a very long time, man. Very long time.
Republicans. He spent some time there. Those are some of the Republican members he was greeting. Obviously, that's Democratic Majority Leader Chuck Schumer behind him. But this is a place where he does have a level of comfort, where he does know folks. It's also interesting, as we've been looking at these cameras in the room, looking at these live feeds as it's happening, the way that you saw his cabinet members come in. As we know that Secretary Miguel Cardona is the designated survivor. That, of course, is always something we look for at a State of the Union address. But did you see Secretary Mayorkas getting greeted frequently by Democratic members as he now is facing so much heat, so much fire, this impeachment push from House Republicans? There's a lot of drama in this room. There's some tension. You don't see it on the president's face, at least at the moment, but look at this shot. Marjorie Taylor Greene right behind him. And I believe that's a hat that says Make America Great Again.
A MAGA hat, and then there are buttons that we understand that some Republicans will be wearing, talking about the Biden border crisis.
Yo, this lady has her MAGA gear right in front of Biden. Listen, Joe Biden, you got to get your MAGA, your gear up, Biden. Get us some gear, some merch, so we can support Biden, man. I need some Biden merch.
With the suspect in that case, a migrant who crossed into this country.
She sat up there with the hat that said 45 right in front of Biden, man. Biden, you better get some hats, man. Tell him it's the 46. Put some respect on 46.
Republican members of Congress are wearing either pins or ribbons, or in some cases, a picture of that young woman who was tragically killed. And we just saw Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm glad, Hallie, that you're lip reading, or your skills are in fine form, or you have better hearing than I did, because I couldn't make that out myself. But so we see the president enter. I mean, talk about relishing the moment. You know, the exit last year was 20 minutes long, which in past years it's 5, 6, 7 minutes. But this is somebody who wants to greet every person.
Joe know how to take a selfie, man. He telling her, yo, come on, get in, get close. Come on, get this correct. You know Joe Biden knows how to take a shot.
Congress will come in the afternoon. Unless you're a member of leadership, there's no designated seating, so you got to save your seat. Absolutely. And members of Congress will do it to snap a selfie, or in the case perhaps of Marjorie Taylor Greene, to have that moment. Here's Joe Manchin.
Here's Joe Manchin, who's of course announced he's not running for re-election. Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Democrats very concerned, bracing for the very strong likelihood that they will lose that seat. But look, I go back to what we were saying, that Joe Biden has spent a lot of time in these chambers. One of his closest aides was asked, is he nervous for a moment this big? The answer from this aide was no, he doesn't get nervous. This is where he is most comfortable. In terms of the top officials we've seen within his administration, I was struck by Secretary Antony Blinken, who has spent...
No matter what side of the aisle that you're on, Republican, Democrat, left, right, this is a moment for Joe Biden. I mean, it's like a party for him. It's like a going out party, because I really see this as one of his last moments, man. He's taking it in because I think he knows his time is ticking.
Looms large over this.
There may be some policy announcements this very night on that issue, because this is obviously a huge international issue. It's a political issue for President Biden, as well as many young voters. Many voters on the progressive left are dismayed at the president's wholehearted support for Israel. We heard the Vice President Kamala Harris with very strong words asking for a ceasefire.
Be interested to see if he matches those words or goes farther.
That's right. I mean, this is one of the most complicated policy issues that this administration and this president faces. We anticipate that he's going to announce a new ramped-up military effort to get aid into Gaza, and so that is going to be significant. But this has divided the Democratic Party, with young voters signaling that they disapprove.
We hear a chant. I want to go to Ryan Nobles, who's in the chamber. Ryan, are you hearing 4 more years? How are your powers of hearing and lip reading?
Hopefully I can hear a little bit better in the actual room, Savannah. But yes, it did appear as the president made his way down past the actual seating of the members. He's now, of course, making his way to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, just greeted members of the Supreme Court. Just as he got down to kind of the final stage before he heads up to the lectern, the Democratic members were chanting 4 more years and clapping loudly for the president. You know, it's interesting. It's really kind of stark to see him in a room like this, where he is so great one-on-one. That is what President Biden is known for, where perhaps sometimes in a big speech he's known for verbal gaps or other issues. When he's having a conversation with someone, he often makes that person feel like they're the most important person in the room. And even in a venue like this, where he has cameras staring at him, millions of people watching all over the world, he takes a moment with each and every person that he sees as he makes his way down the aisle and has that moment with them. In some cases, it's like he's seeing a friend he hasn't seen in a long time with a big hug, and it looks as though he's sharing some sort of moment with him. And just to get back to that moment with Marjorie Taylor Greene coming down the aisle, you know, we could see her don her hat, clearly looking to have a viral moment. She also had her camera phone pointed at the president the entire time, so I'm sure that's something that she's going to attempt to make a big deal of on conservative media. It didn't seem to bother the president at all. You couldn't tell from our vantage point whether or not he engaged with her or just kind of walked by as she was trying to get her message to him. So this is, I would imagine, somewhat of a frustration for the planners of this event here tonight. I don't know if they back-timed enough or worked up enough time for Joe Biden to greet all these folks. You know, I think there's a level of frustration for him as president that he doesn't have the opportunity to have these conversations as frequently as he did when he was a member of the Senate.
Well, he is taking the podium now, and we'll be hearing from the president in a moment. And Krista, very quickly, as we watched him a moment ago pass by members of the Supreme Court, and it made me wonder, at least, how many times will this court potentially touch issues related to this race?
Absolutely. We await their decision on whether former President Trump deserves immunity in the January 6th trial, Lester.
Tony. Thank you.
Hope y'all got your popcorn ready. Let's go. Let us know how y'all feel after. Let us know how you feel after. And we're going to look at the poll numbers.
Good evening. Good evening. If I were smart, I'd go home now.
Started off with a bang. Started off with a bang. He started off with a bang.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Vice President, members of Congress, my fellow Americans, in January 1941, Franklin Roosevelt came to this chamber to speak to the nation, and he said, I address you at a moment unprecedented in the history of the Union. Hitler was on the march. War was raging in Europe. President Roosevelt's purpose was to wake up Congress and alert the American people that this was no ordinary time. Freedom and democracy were under assault in the world. Tonight, I come to this same chamber to address the nation. Now, it's we who face an unprecedented moment in the history of the Union. And yes, my purpose tonight is to wake up the Congress and alert the American people that this is no ordinary moment either. Not since President Lincoln and the Civil War have freedom and democracy been under assault at home as they are today. What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas at the very same time. Overseas, Putin of Russia is on the march, invading Ukraine and sowing chaos throughout Europe and beyond. If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, I assure you he will not. But Ukraine can stop Putin. Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons that needs to defend itself. That is all. That is all Ukraine is asking. They're not asking for American soldiers. In fact, there are no American soldiers at war in Ukraine, and I'm determined to keep it that way. But now, assistance to Ukraine is being blocked by those who want to walk away from our world leadership. It wasn't long ago when a Republican president named Ronald Reagan thundered, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Now, my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable.
That's 3 times Kamala got up. How many y'all got? How many times will Kamala Harris get up? Put it in the comment section.
As a founding member of NATO, the military alliance of democratic nations, created after World War II to prevent war and keep the peace. And today, we've made NATO stronger than ever. We welcomed Finland to the alliance last year. And just this morning, Sweden officially joined, and their minister is here tonight. Come here, stand up. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And they know how to fight. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome to NATO, the strongest military alliance the world has ever seen. I say this to Congress. We have to stand up to Putin. Send me a bipartisan national security bill. History is literally watching. History is watching. If the United States walks away, it will put Ukraine at risk. Europe is at risk. The free world will be at risk, emboldening others to do what they wish to do us harm. My message to President Putin, who I've known for a long time, is simple. We will not walk away. We will not bow down. I will not bow down.
All the Republicans sitting down, all of them. Republicans are crazy.
History is watching. Just like history watched 3 years ago on January 6th. When insurrectionists stormed this very Capitol and placed a dagger to the throat of American democracy. Many of you were here on that darkest of days. We all saw with our own eyes the insurrectionists were not patriots. They'd come to stop the peaceful transfer of power, to overturn the will of the people. January 6th lies about the 2020 election and the plots to steal the election posed a gravest threat to U.S. democracy since the Civil War. But they failed. America stood. America stood strong, and democracy prevailed. We must be honest. The threat to democracy must be defended. My predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th. I will not do that. This is the moment to speak the truth and to bury the lies. Here's the simple truth. You can't love your country only when you win.
Yikes. Yikes. That's a shot at Donald Trump.
as I've done ever since being elected to office, I ask all of you, without regard to party, to join together and defend democracy. Remember your oath of office, foreign and domestic. Respect free and fair elections. Restore trust in our institutions. And make clear political violence has absolutely no place in America, zero place. Again, it's not hyperbole to suggest history is watching. We're watching. Your children and grandchildren will read about this day and what we do. History is watching another assault on freedom. Joining us tonight is Latoya Beasley, a social worker from Birmingham, Alabama. 14 months ago, she and her husband welcomed a baby girl thanks to the miracle of IVF. She scheduled treatments to have that second child, but the Alabama Supreme Court shut down IVF treatments across the state, unleashed by a Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade. She was told her dream would have to wait. What her family had got through should never have happened. Unless Congress acts, it could happen again. So tonight, let's stand up for families like hers. To my friends across the aisle, don't keep this waiting any longer. Guarantee the right to AVF. Guarantee it nationwide. Like most Americans, I believe Roe v. Wade got it right. I thank Vice President Harris for being an incredible leader, defending reproductive freedom, and so much more. Thank you. My predecessor came to office determined to see Roe v. Wade overturned. He's the reason it was overturned, and he brags about it. Look at the chaos that has resulted. Joining us tonight is Kate Cox, the wife and mother from Dallas. She's become pregnant again and had a fetus of a fatal condition. Her doctor told Kate that her own life and her ability to have children in the future were at risk if she didn't act. Because Texas law banned her ability to act, Kate and her husband had to leave the state to get what she needed. What her family got through should have never happened as well, but it's happening in too many others. There are state laws banning the freedom to choose, criminalizing doctors, forcing survivors of rape and incest to leave their states to get the treatment they need. Many of you in this chamber and my predecessor are promising to pass a national ban on reproductive freedom. My God, what freedom else would you take away? Look, it's a decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court majority wrote the following, and with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. Electoral or political power. You're about to realize just how much you're right about that. Clearly, those bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade have no clue about the power of women. But they found out when reproductive freedom was on the ballot. We won in 2022 and 2020, and we'll win again in 2024. If you, the American people, send me a Congress that supports the right to choose, I promise you, I'll restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land again. Folks, America cannot go back. I'm here tonight to show what I believe is the way forward, because I know how far we come. 4 years ago next week, before I came to office, the country was hit by the worst pandemic and the worst economic crisis in a century. Remember the fear, record losses? Remember the spikes in and crime and the murder rate, raging virus that took more than 1 million American lives, of loved ones, millions left behind, a mental health crisis of isolation and loneliness. A president, my predecessor, failed the most basic presidential duty that he owes to American people, the duty to care. I think that's unforgivable. I came to office determined to get us through one of the toughest periods in the nation's history. We have. It doesn't make news in 1,000 cities and towns. The American people are writing the greatest comeback story never told. So let's tell the story here. Tell it here and now. America's comeback is building the future of American possibilities, building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down, investing in all America, in all Americans, to make sure everyone has a fair shot, and we leave no one behind. The pandemic no longer controls our lives. The vaccine that saved us from COVID are now being used to beat cancer, turning setback into comeback. That's what America does. That's what America does. Folks, my inherited economy is on the brink. Now our economy is literally the envy of the world. 15 million new jobs in just 3 years, a record, a record. Unemployment at 50-year lows. A record 16 million Americans are starting small businesses, and each one is a literal act of hope. With historic job growth and small business growth for Black and Hispanics and Asian Americans, 800,000 new manufacturing jobs in America and counting. Where is it written we can't be the manufacturing capital of the world? We are, we will. More people have health insurance today. More people have health insurance today than ever before. The racial wealth gap is as small as it's been in 20 years. Wages keep going up. Inflation keeps coming down. Inflation has dropped from 9% to 3%, the lowest in the world, and tending lower. The landing is and will be soft. And now, instead of importing foreign products and exporting American jobs, we're exporting American products and creating American jobs. Right here in America, where they belong. And it takes time, but the American people are beginning to feel it. Consumer studies show consumer confidence is soaring. Buy America has been the law of the land since the 1930s. Past administrations, including my predecessor, including some Democrats as well in the past, failed to buy American. Not anymore. On my watch, federal projects that you fund, like helping build American roads, bridges, and highways, will be made with American products and built by American workers. Creating good-paying American jobs. And thanks to our CHIPS and Science Act, the United States is investing more in research and development than ever before. During the pandemic, a shortage of semiconductors, chips, that drove up the price of everything from cell phones to automobiles. And by the way, we invented those chips right here in America. Well, instead of having to import them, private companies are now investing billions of dollars to build new chip factories here in America, creating tens of thousands of jobs. Many of those jobs paying $100,000 a year and don't require a college degree. In fact, my policies have attracted $650 billion in private sector investment in clean energy, advanced manufacturing, creating tens of thousands of jobs here in America. And And thanks to our bipartisan infrastructure law, 46,000 new projects have been announced all across your communities. And by the way, I noticed some of you strongly voted against it, or they're cheering on that money coming in. I like it. I'm with you. I'm with you. And if any of you don't want that money in your district, just let me know. Modernize our roads and bridges, ports and airports, public transit systems. Removing poisonous lead pipes so every child can drink clean water without risk of brain damage.
Biden had a few jokes, man. Biden had a few jokes. But are they hitting like Trump's?
Affordable high-speed internet for every American, no matter where you live, urban, suburban, or rural communities, in red states and blue states. Record investments in tribal communities. Because of my investment in family farms, because I invested in family farms led by my Secretary of Agriculture, who knows more about this than anybody I know, we're better able to stay in the family for those farms and their children and grandchildren won't have to leave home to make a living. It's transformative. The great comeback story is Belvidere, Illinois, home to an auto plant for nearly 60 years. Before I came to office, the plant was on its way to shutting down. Thousands of workers feared for their livelihoods. Hope was fading. Then I was elected to office, and we raised the Belvidere repeatedly with auto companies, knowing unions would make all the difference. The UAW worked like hell to keep the plant open and get these jobs back, and together we succeeded. Instead of auto factories shutting down, auto factories reopening, a new state-of-the-art battery factory is being built to power those cars there at the same. The folks of Belvidere, I say, instead of your town being left behind, your community is moving forward again. Because instead of watching auto jobs of the future go overseas, 4,000 union jobs with higher wages are building the future in Belvidere right here in America. Here tonight is UAW President Shawn Fain, a great friend and a great labor leader. Shawn, where are you? Stand up. And Dawn Sims, a third-generation worker, UAW worker at Belvidere. Shawn, I was proud to be the first president to stand on the picket line, and today, Dawn has a good job in her hometown, providing stability for her family and pride and dignity as well. Showing once again, Wall Street didn't build America. They're not bad guys. They didn't build it, though. The middle class built the country, and unions built the middle class. I say to the American people, when America gets knocked down, we get back up. We keep going. That's America. That's you, the American people. It's because of you America's coming back. It's because of you our future is brighter. It's because of you that tonight we can proudly say the state of our union is strong and getting stronger. Tonight, I want to talk about the future of possibilities that we can build together. A future where the days of trickle-down economics are over and the wealthy and the biggest corporations no longer get all the tax breaks. And by the way, I understand corporations. I come from a state that has more corporations invested than every one of your states in the state of the United States combined. And I represented it for 36 years. I'm not anti-corporation, but I grew up in a home where trickle-down economics didn't put much on my dad's kitchen table. That's why I determined to turn things around so middle class does well. When they do well, the poor go way up and the wealthy still do very well. We all do well. And there's more to do to make sure you're feeling the benefits of all we're doing. Americans pay more for prescription drugs than anywhere in the world. It's wrong, and I'm ending it. With the law that I proposed and signed, not one of you Republican buddies voted for it. We finally beat Big Pharma. Instead of paying $400 a month or thereabouts for insulin with diabetes, and it only costs $10 to make, they only get paid $35 a month now and still make a healthy profit. And I want to, but what to do next? I want to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for every American who needs it. Everyone. For years, people have talked about it, but finally we got it done and gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prices on prescription drugs, just like the VA is able to do for veterans. That's not just saving seniors money, it's saving taxpayers money. We cut the federal deficit by $160 billion. Because Medicare will no longer have to pay those exorbitant prices to Big Pharma. This year, Medicare is negotiating lower prices for some of the costliest drugs on the market that treat everything from heart disease to arthritis. It's now time to go further and give Medicare the power to negotiate lower prices for 500 different drugs over the next decade. They're making a lot of money, guys. And they'll still be extremely profitable. Will not only save lives, it will save taxpayers another $200 billion. Starting next year, the same law caps total prescription drug costs for seniors on Medicare at $2,000 a year, even for expensive cancer drugs that cost $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. Now I want to cap prescription drug costs at $2,000 a year for everyone. Folks.
What?
I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but if you want to get an Air Force One and fly to Toronto, Berlin, Moscow, even Moscow, probably. And bring your prescription with you, and I promise you I'll get it for you for 40% the cost you're paying now. Same company, same drug, same place. Folks, the Affordable Care Act, the old Obamacare, is still a very big deal.
Shout out to Obama, wherever you at.
Over 100 million of you can no longer be denied health insurance because of pre-existing condition. Well, my predecessor and many in this chamber want to take this prescription drug away by repealing the Affordable Care Act. I'm not going to let that happen. We stopped you 50 times before, and we'll stop you again. In fact, I'm not only protecting it, I'm expanding it. The enacted tax credits of $800 per person per year reduce health care costs for millions of working families. That tax credit expires next year. I want to make that savings permanent. To state the obvious, women are more than half our population, but research on women's health has always been underfunded. That's why we're launching the first ever White House initiative on women's health research, led by Jill, doing an incredible job as First Lady. We'll pass my plan for $12 billion to transfer women's health research and benefit millions of lives all across America. I know the cost of housing is so important to you. If inflation keeps coming down, mortgage rates will come down as well, and the Fed acknowledges that. But I'm not waiting. I want to provide an annual tax credit that will give Americans $400 a month for the next 2 years as mortgage rates come down, to put toward their mortgages when they buy their first home or trade up for a little more space. Just for 2 years.
Wow, how you guys feel about that?
And my administration is also eliminating title insurance on federally backed mortgages. When you refinance your home, you can save $1,000 or more as a consequence. For millions of renters, we're cracking down on big landlords who use antitrust law, who break antitrust laws by price fixing and driving up rents. We've cut red tape so builders can get federally financing, which is already helping build a record 1.7 million new housing units nationwide. Now pass and build and renovate 2 million affordable homes and bring those rents down.
Is your rent too high? Is your rent too high?
To remain the strongest economy in the world, we need to have the best education system in the world. And I suspect all of you, want to give every child, a good start by providing access to preschool for 3 and 4 years old. You know, I think I pointed out last year, that children coming from broken homes where there's no books, they're not read to, not spoken to very often, start school, kindergarten or first grade, having heard 1 million fewer words spoken. Well, studies show that children who go to preschool are nearly 50% more likely to finish high school, go on to earn a 2- and 4-year degree, no matter what their background is. I met a year and a half ago with the leaders of the Business Roundtable. They were mad that they were angry, I think, well, they were discussing why I wanted to spend money on education. I pointed out to them as vice president, I met with over 182 of those folks. Don't hold me to the exact number. And I asked them what they need most, the CEOs. And you've had the same experience on both sides of the aisle. They say a better educated workforce, right? So I looked at them and I say, I come from Delaware. DuPont used to be the 8th largest corporation in the world. And every new enterprise they bought, they educated the workforce to that enterprise. But none of you do that anymore. Why are you angry with me providing you the opportunity for the best educated workforce in the world? And they all looked at me and said, I think you're right. I want to expand high-quality tutoring and summer learning to see that every child learns to read by 3rd grade. I'm also connecting local businesses and high schools so students get hands-on experience and a path to a good-paying job, whether or not they go to college. And I want to make sure the college is more affordable. Let's continue increasing the Pell Grants to working and middle-class families and increase record investments in HBCUs and minority-serving institutions, including Hispanic institutions. And I was told I couldn't universally just change the way in which we dealt with student loans. I fixed 2 student loan programs that already existed to reduce the burden of student debt for nearly 4 million Americans, including nurses, firefighters, and others in public service. Like Keenan Jones, a public educator from Minnesota, who with us tonight. Keenan, where are you? Keenan, thank you. He's educated hundreds of students so they can go to college. Now he's able to help, after debt forgiveness, get his own daughter to college. And folks, look, such relief is good for the economy because folks are now able to buy a home, start a business, start a family. While we're at it, I want to give public school teachers a raise.
Shout out to the public school teachers.
And by the way, the first couple of years, we cut the deficit. Now, let me speak to the question of fundamental fairness for all Americans. I've been delivering real results in fiscally responsible ways. We've already cut the federal deficit. We've already cut the federal deficit over $1 trillion. I signed the bipartisan deal to cut another $1 trillion in the next decade. It's my goal to cut the federal deficit another $3 trillion by making big corporations and very wealthy finally beginning to pay their fair share. Look, I'm a capitalist. If you want to make or can make $1 million or millions of bucks, that's great. Just pay your fair share in taxes. A fair tax code is how we invest things to make this country great. Healthcare, education, defense, and so much more. But here's the deal. The last administration enacted a $2 trillion tax cut, overwhelmingly benefit the top 1%, the very wealthy and the biggest corporations, and exploded the federal deficit. They added more to the national debt than any presidential term in American history. Check the numbers. Folks at home, does anybody really think the tax code is fair? No. Do you really think the wealthy and big corporations need another $2 trillion tax break? No. I sure don't. I'm going to keep fighting like hell to make it fair. Under my plan, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay an additional penny in federal taxes. Nobody, not one penny. And they haven't yet. In fact, the child tax credit I passed during the pandemic cut taxes for millions of working families and cut child poverty in half. Restore that child tax credit. No child should go hungry in this country. The way to make the tax code fair is to make big corporations and the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Remember in 2020, 55 of the biggest companies in America made $40 billion and paid zero in federal income tax. Zero. Not anymore. Thanks to the law I wrote and we signed, big companies have to pay a minimum of 15%. But that's still less than working people pay in federal taxes. It's time to raise corporate minimum tax to at least 21%. So every big corporation finally begins to pay their fair share. I also want to end tax breaks for big pharma, big oil, private jets, massive executive pay when it's only supposed to be $1 million that could be deducted. They can pay them $20 million if they want, but deduct $1 million. End it now. You know, there are 1,000 billionaires in America. You know what the average federal tax is for those billionaires? No. They're making great sacrifices, 8.2%. That's far less than the vast majority of Americans pay. No billionaire should pay a lower federal tax rate than a teacher, a sanitation worker, or a nurse. I propose a minimum tax for billionaires of 25%, just 25%. You know what that would raise? That would raise $500 billion over the next 10 years. And imagine what that could do for America. Imagine a future with affordable child care, millions of families can get they need to go to work to help grow the economy. Imagine a future with paid leave, because no one should have to choose between working and taking care of their sick family member. Imagine the future of home care and elder care, and people living with disabilities, so they can stay in their homes and family caregivers can finally get the pay they deserve. Tonight, let's all agree once again to stand up for seniors. Many of my friends on the other side of the aisle want to put Social Security on the chopping block. If anyone here tries to cut Social Security, Medicare, or raise the retirement age, I will stop you. The working people who built this country pay more into Social Security than millionaires and billionaires do. It's not fair. We have two ways to go. Republicans can cut Social Security and give more tax breaks to the wealthy. That's the proposal. Oh no, you guys don't want another $2 trillion tax cut? I kind of thought that's what your plan was. Well, that's good to hear. You're not going to cut another $2 trillion for the super wealthy. That's good to hear. I'll protect and strengthen Social Security and make the wealthy pay their fair share. Look, too many corporations raise prices to pad their profits, charging more and more for less and less. That's why we're cracking down on corporations that engage in price gouging and deceptive pricing, from food to health care to housing. In fact, the snack companies think you won't notice if they change the size of the bag and put a hell of a lot fewer, same size bag, put fewer chips in it. No, I'm not joking. It's called shrinkflation. Pass Bobby Casey's bill and stop this. I really mean it. You probably all saw that commercial on Snickers bars. And you get charged the same amount, and you got about, I don't know, 10% fewer Snickers in it. Look, I'm also getting rid of junk fees. Those hidden fees at the end of your bill that are there without your knowledge. My administration announced we're cutting credit card late fees from $32 to $8. Banks and credit card companies are allowed to charge what it costs them to instigate the collection. And that's more, a hell of a lot, like $8 and 30-some dollars. They don't like it. The credit card companies don't like it. But I'm saving American families $20 billion a year with all the junk fees I'm eliminating. Folks at home, that's why the banks are so mad. It's $20 billion in profit. I'm not stopping there. My administration has proposed rules to make cable, travel, utilities, and online ticket sellers tell you the total price up front, so there are no surprises. It matters. It matters. And so does this. In November, my team began serious negotiation with a bipartisan group of senators. The result was a bipartisan bill with the toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so? Oh, you don't like that bill, huh? That conservatives got together and said it was a good bill? I'll be darned. That's amazing. That bipartisan bill would hire 1,500 more security agents and officers, 100 more immigration judges to help tackle the backload of 2 million cases, 4,300 more asylum officers, and new policies so they can resolve cases in 6 months instead of 6 years now. What are you against? 100 more high-tech drug detection machines to significantly increase the ability to screen and stop vehicles smuggling fentanyl into America. That's killing thousands of children. This bill would save lives and bring order to the border. It will also give me and any new president new emergency authority to temporarily shut down the border when the number of migrants at the border is overwhelming. The Border Patrol Union has endorsed this bill. The Federal Chamber of Commerce is, yeah. You're saying low. Look at the facts. I know you know how to read.
Wow. Do you know how to read? Listen, when was Biden going to address the migrant situation? It's the State of the Union. When is he going to address a migrant situation?
The House and Senate would endorse the bill as well, the majority right now. But unfortunately, politics has derailed this bill so far. I'm told my predecessor called members of Congress in the Senate to demand they block the bill. He feels political win. He viewed it as a political win for me and a political loser for him. It's not about him. It's not about me. I'd be a winner. Not really. Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border, people pay these smugglers $8,000 to get across the border because they know if they get by and let into the country, it's 6 to 8 years before they have a hearing. And it's worth taking the chance of the $8,000. But if it's only 6 weeks, the idea is it's highly unlikely that people will pay that money and come all that way, knowing that they'll be able to be kicked out quickly. Folks, I would respectfully suggest my Republican friends owe it to the American people, get this bill done. We need to act now.
Look at the Republicans' face.
And if my predecessor is watching, instead of paying politics and pressuring members of Congress to block the bill, join me in telling the Congress to pass it. We can do it together. But that's what here's what he will not do. I will not demonize immigrants saying they are poison in the blood of our country. I will not separate families. I will not ban people because of their faith. Unlike my predecessor on my first day in office, I introduced a comprehensive bill to fix our immigration system. Take a look at it. It has all these and more. Secure the border. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, and so much more. But unlike my predecessor, I know who we are as Americans. We're the only nation in the world with a heart and soul that draws from old and new. Home to Native Americans, whose ancestors have been here for thousands of years. Home to people of from every place on earth. They came freely. Some came in chains. Some came when famine struck, like my ancestral family in Ireland. Some to flee persecution, to chase dreams that are impossible anywhere but here in America. That's America. And we all come from somewhere, but we're all Americans. Look, folks, we have a simple choice. We can fight about fixing the border, or we can fix it. I'm ready to fix it. Send me the border bill now.
Here he goes addressing the border, y'all. This is what we wait for.
A transformational moment in history happened 59 years ago today in Selma, Alabama. Hundreds of foot soldiers for justice marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, named after the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, to claim their fundamental right to vote. They were beaten, they were bloody, and left for dead. Our late friend and former colleague, John Lewis, was on that march. We miss him. But joining us tonight are other marchers, both in the gallery and on the floor, including Betty Mae Fikes, known as the voice of Selma. The daughter of gospel singers and preachers, she sang songs of prayer and protest on that bloody Sunday to help shake the nation's conscience. 5 months later, the Voting Rights Act passed and was signed into law. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But 59 years later, there are forces taking us back in time. Voter suppression, election subversion, unlimited dark money.
He barely touched on the migrant situation, man. How do y'all feel about that?
This is a great friend to many of us here. But if you truly want to honor him and all the heroes that marched with him, then it's time to do more than talk. Pass the Freedom to Vote Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And stop denying another core value of America, our diversity across American life. Banning books, it's wrong. Instead of erasing history, let's make history. I want to protect fundamental rights. Pass the Equality Act. And my message to transgender Americans, I have your back. Pass the PRO Act for workers' rights. Raise the federal minimum wage, because every worker has a right to a decent living more than $7 an hour. We're also making history by confronting the climate crisis, not denying it. I don't think any of you think there's no longer a climate crisis. At least I hope you don't. I'm taking the most significant action ever on climate in the history of the world. I'm cutting our carbon emissions in half by 2030, creating tens of thousands of clean energy jobs like the IBEW work is building and installing 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. Conserving 30% of America's lands and waters by 2030. And taking action on environmental justice fence line communities smothered by the legacy of pollution. And patterned after the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps, I launched the Climate Corps to put 20,000 young people to work in the forefront of our clean energy future. I'll triple that number in a decade. To state the obvious, all Americans deserve the freedom to be safe. And America is safer today than when I took office. Year before I took office, murder rates went up 30%. 30% they went up. The biggest increase in history. It was then, through my American Rescue Plan, which every American voted against, I might add, we made the largest investment in public safety ever. Last year, the murder rate saw the sharpest decrease in history. Violent crime fell to one of its lowest levels in more than 50 years. But we have more to do. We have to help cities invest in more community police officers, more mental health workers, more community violence intervention. Give communities the tool to crack down on gun crime, retail crime, and carjacking. Keep building trust, as I've been doing by taking executive action on police reform. and calling for it to be the law of the land. Directing my cabinet to review the federal classification of marijuana and expunging thousands of convictions for the mere possession, because no one should be jailed for simply using or have it on their record. Take on crimes of domestic violence.
Didn't Kamala Harris convict a lot of those drug dealers?
Federal Enforcement of the Violence Against Women Act that I proudly wrote when I was a senator. So we can finally end the scourge against women in America. There are other kinds of violence I want to stop. With us tonight is Jasmine, whose 9-year-old sister Jackie was murdered with 21 classmates and teachers in elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. Very soon after that happened, Jill and I went to Uvalde for a couple of days. We spent hours and hours with each of the families. We heard their message, so everyone in this room, in this chamber, could hear the same message. The constant refrain, and I was there for hours meeting with every family. They said, do something. Do something. Well, I did do something by establishing the first ever Office of Gun Violence Prevention in the White House, that the Vice President is leading the charge. Thank you for doing it. Meanwhile, my predecessor told the NRA he's proud he did nothing on guns when he was president. Oh. After another shooting in Iowa recently, he said, when asked what to do about it, he said, just get over it. There's his quote, just get over it. I say, stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it. I'm proud we beat the NRA when I signed the most significant gun safety law in nearly 30 years because of this Congress. We now must beat the NRA again. I'm demanding a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. Pass universal background checks. None of this. I taught the Second Amendment for 12 years. None of this violates the Second Amendment or vilifies responsible gun owners. You know, as we manage challenges at home, we're also managing crises abroad, including in the Middle East. I know the last 5 months have been gut-wrenching for so many people, for the Israeli people, for the Palestinian people, and so many here in America. This crisis began on October 7th with a massacre by a terrorist group called Hamas, as you all know. 1,200 innocent people, women and girls, men and boys, slaughtered after enduring sexual violence. The deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And 250 hostages taken. Here in this chamber tonight are families whose loved ones are still being held by Hamas. I pledge to all the families that we will not rest until we bring every one of your loved ones home. We also work around the clock to bring home Evan and Paul, Americans being unjustly detained by the Russians and others around the world. Israel has a right to go after Hamas. Hamas ended this conflict by releasing hostages, laying down arms, could end it by releasing the hostages, laying down arms, and surrendering those responsible for October 7th. But Israel has Israel has an added burden because Hamas hides and operates among the civilian population like cowards, under hospitals, daycare centers, and all the like. Israel also has a fundamental responsibility, though, to protect innocent civilians in Gaza. This war has taken a greater toll on innocent civilians than all previous wars in Gaza combined. More than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed, most of whom are not Hamas. Thousands and thousands of innocents, women and children, girls and boys, also orphaned. Nearly 2 million more Palestinians under bombardment or displacement. Homes destroyed, neighborhoods in rubble, cities in ruin. Families without food, water, medicine. It's heartbreaking. I've been working nonstop to establish an immediate ceasefire that would last for 6 weeks to get all the prisoners released, all the hostages released, to get the hostages home and ease the intolerable and humanitarian crisis and build toward an enduring, something more enduring. The United States has been leading international efforts to get more humanitarian assistance to Gaza. Tonight, I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and
He talked more about the Palestinians and overseas Gaza than he did our borders. How you feel about that?
Humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day. And Israel must do its part. Israel must allow more aid into Gaza to ensure humanitarian workers aren't caught in the crossfire.
He spent more time talking about other borders than our borders, y'all.
We're going to have a crossing in northern Gaza. For the leadership of Israel, I say this: humanitarian assistance cannot be a secondary consideration or a bargaining chip. Protecting and saving innocent lives has to be a priority. As we look to the future, the only real solution to the situation is a two-state solution over time. And I say this as a lifelong supporter of Israel. My entire career, no one has a stronger record with Israel than I do. I challenge any of you here. I'm the only American president to visit Israel in wartime. But there is no other path that guarantees Israel security and democracy. There is no other path that guarantees Palestinians can live in peace with peace and dignity. And there's no other path that guarantees peace between Israel and all of its neighbors, including Saudi Arabia, with whom I'm talking. Creating stability in the Middle East also means containing the threat posed by Iran. That's why I built a coalition of more than a dozen countries to defend international shipping and freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. I've ordered strikes to degrade the Houthi capability and defend U.S. forces in the region. As Commander-in-Chief, I will not hesitate to direct further measures to protect our people and our military personnel. For years, I've heard many of my Republican and Democratic friends say that China is on the rise and America's falling behind. They've got it backwards. I've been saying it for over 4 years, even when I wasn't president. America's rising. We have the best economy in the world. And since I've come to office, our GDP is up, our trade deficit with China is down to the lowest point in over a decade. And we're standing up against China's unfair economic practices. We're standing up for peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits. I've revitalized our partnership and alliance in the Pacific. India, Australia, Japan, South Korea, Pacific Islands. I've made sure that the most advanced American technologies can't be used in China, not allowing to trade them there. Frankly, for all this tough talk on China, it never occurred to my predecessor to do any of that. I want competition with China, not conflict. And we're in a stronger position to win the conflict of the 21st century against China than anyone else, for that matter, than any time as well. Here at home, I've signed over 400 bipartisan bills. But there's more to pass my unity agenda. Strengthen penalties on fentanyl trafficking. You don't want to do that, huh? Pass bipartisan privacy legislation to protect our children online. Harness the promise of AI to protect us from peril. Ban AI voice impersonations and more. and keep our truly sacred obligation to train and equip those we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they come home and when they don't. That's why the song Support and Help of Dennis and the VA, I signed the PACT Act. One of the most significant laws ever, helping millions of veterans exposed to toxins who now are battling more than 100 different cancers. Many of them don't come home, but we owe them and their families support. We owe it to ourselves to keep supporting our new health research agency called ARPA-H, and remind us that we can do big things like end cancer as we know it, and we will. Let me close with this. Yay!
Look at the Republicans. Republicans said, yeah, head closed. You didn't even talk.
I don't hear you more, Lindsey, but I got to say a few more things.
Republicans said you didn't even talk about immigration. Listen, he talked about other people's borders more than our borders. That's crazy.
To be my age, certain things become clearer than ever. I know the American story. Again and again, I've seen the contest between competing forces in the battle for the soul of our nation. Between those who want to pull America back to the past and those who want to move America into the future. My lifetime has taught me to embrace freedom and democracy, a future based on core values that have defined America: honesty, decency, dignity, equality, to respect everyone, to give everyone a fair shot, to give hate no safe harbor. Now, other people my age see it differently. The American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution, that's not me. I was born amid World War II, when America stood for the freedom of the world. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, among working-class people who built this country. I watched in horror as two of my heroes, like many of you did, Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy, were assassinated. And their legacies inspired me to pursue a career in service. I left the law firm and became a public defender because my city of Wilmington was the only city in America occupied by the National Guard after Dr. King was assassinated because of the riots. And I became a county councilman almost by accident. I got elected to the United States Senate when I had no intention of running at age 29. Then vice president of our first black president. Now president to the first women vice president.
Bring it home, Joe. Bring it home, Joe. Even though you didn't talk out about the border, shout out to you, Joe.
In my career, I've been told I was too young. By the way, they didn't let me on the Senate elevators for votes sometimes. Not a joke. And I've been told I'm too old. Whether young or old, I've always known what endures. I've known our North Star. The very idea of America is that we're all created equal and deserves to be treated equally throughout our lives. We've never fully lived up to that idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I won't walk away from it now. I'm optimistic. I really am. I'm optimistic, Nancy. My fellow Americans, the issue facing our nation isn't how old we are. It's how old are our ideas. Hate, anger, revenge, retribution are the oldest of ideas. But you can't lead America with ancient ideas that only take us back. You lead America, the land of possibilities. You need a vision for the future and what can and should be done. Tonight you've heard mine. I see a future where defending democracy, you don't diminish it. I see a future where we restore the right to choose and protect our freedoms, not take them away. I see a future.
There go Elizabeth Warren.
As finally has a fair shot, and the wealthy have to pay their fair share in taxes. I see a future where we save the planet from the climate crisis and our country from gun violence. Above all, I see a future for all Americans. I see a country for all Americans. And I will always be president for all Americans because I believe in America. I believe in you, the American people. You're the reason we've never been more optimistic about our future than I am now. So let's build the future together. Let's remember who we are. We are the United States of America. And there is nothing beyond our capacity when we act together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Shout out to the vets and shout out to everybody who served, from the police office to nurses, doctors, everybody. Like, yeah, shout out to you guys. You guys are the best. You guys are the best.
Of this term, a vision for the future, and also an argument for 4 more years, a chant that was heard by Democrats throughout this speech, which lasted a little over an hour and 9 minutes. It was energetic and optimistic. And the president clearly trying to draw a contrast with the individual he called his predecessor on many, many occasions, never by name. But everyone knows who he meant, his opponent in this next election, Donald Trump.
Not a lot of preamble in his speech. He went right at it. First talking about freedom and democracy under attack, talking about January 6th, the lies he says that pose a threat to U.S. democracy, speaking truth to January 6th lies. And he says you can't love your country only when you lose. And then went on into Roe v. Wade.
Only when you win, exactly. And it seems like he wanted to start this with the theme of democracy, that democracy itself is under attack overseas and here at home. He had a muscular set of comments for Vladimir Putin, talking tough against the Russian leader.
Why don't we listen to a little bit of this conversation?
Mr. Chairman, someplace you'd help and someplace you'd hurt. He said, I'll come and campaign for you again, whichever helps.
Come on now.
In any event, talking about democracy attacked abroad, but also here at home, mentioning January 6th very high up in the speech.
And there was some heckling and some give and take between Republicans and the president. He seemed to relish those moments, seemed to be expecting those moments, I think you could probably fairly say, and parried a little bit with Republicans in the crowd.
And as for the elephant in the room, and that is not a partisan statement, his age, he took it on, and there has been so much talk about his age, whether at 81 years old, he is up to the job. This is something that voters will be deciding, that voters have expressed concern about. He took on the issue, saying,
how y'all feel, y'all? How do y'all feel? How do y'all feel so far? These are the poll numbers. We're going to show y'all to y'all for a little bit while Biden exits. You see here, Trump is still up by 1%, okay? Slight percentage point in the polls, 46%, 45%, and then you got your 9% in the middle. So that's not nationally. And you can take a look at the states right here. Let me know how you feel. Do you feel Joe Biden did a good job tonight? Is he better than Trump speaking? What, a joke's better? He took a couple shots at Trump, but I would like to have seen him address the border crisis a little bit more. I think he talked about the borders of other countries more than he talked about our own, right? The security of other countries more than he took time to talk about our borders. I'm gonna let you guys listen to a little bit of this, and then we're just gonna wrap it up, man, so you can let us know your thoughts.
Donald Trump when he laid out a vision, he says, of America that is optimistic. And he tried to contrast with former President Trump, saying he is laying out a vision of America that is dark and destitute.
He's trying to turn what is his biggest political liability right now into an asset. He's trying to make the case that with time comes wisdom and that he's the best person to lead this country into the future. We know that about 3/4 of Americans have concerns about the president's age and his fitness for office, including about half of his own party. And what was interesting to watch the way Democrats were reacting to the president.
Let me know how you guys feel. Do you think Joe Biden's age is going to be an issue? Do you think age is going to be an issue? All right? Let us know your thoughts. 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 We see you, Nancy. I'm going to let y'all get a little bit of this, and then we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for tapping in with us. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate y'all. We appreciate y'all.
It's something that has weighed this candidacy down. He comes out tonight and turns it on its ear and says it's Republicans. Is that going to fly with Americans who have, for weeks and months, watched the crowds coming across the border, have watched their cities transform as we see more migrants?
Well, it might. He's effectively taking a page out of the playbook of a Harry Truman who ran against the do-nothing Congress. And that's what we saw this president do tonight, effectively saying we had a bipartisan bill on the table. It was scrapped at the direction of Donald Trump. And that is energizing for the Democratic base. We'll have to see if it helps him win over some of those independents. He did hold up that pin. He said her name. Of course, that's what Republicans, Marjorie Taylor Greene, were urging him to do about Laken Riley. Of course, that nursing student who was killed by someone who did come into the country illegally. And of course, there's some question about whether he got her name right. But it was a defiant moment, Savannah and Lester. And I'm hearing from Democrats, one person telling me this was a total 10. So that's how they're responding.
So
all right, guys, let us know your thoughts. We appreciate y'all for tapping in. We appreciate y'all for tapping in. All right, like, subscribe, share. We're going to follow the migrant situation and the election all the way through.